Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for Georgian College's very first virtual open house. We're so glad you could be with us today. This is our last session of the day, and we're going to be talking about marine studies today. And in a second, I'll just introduce Colin, who's going to walk us through a presentation. We do have our Q&A chat box open. So if you do have any questions for us, you can start entering those right now. Kristen will be our moderator and she'll make sure that your questions come up at the end of the session or after Colin's presentation, and we'll have them get to as many of your questions as we can today. My name's Sharon and I'm typically the Georgian College Communications Manager by day, but today I'm going to be your host to help you get through this session and get as many of your questions answered as possible. So without further delay, I will turn things over to Colin, who is a program coordinator for the Marine Studies program. Over to you, Colin.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Colin McNeil. I am the Marine Studies Marine Programs Coordinator for both the Marine Navigation Technology Program and the Marine Engineering Technology programs here at Georgian College in Owen Sound. I myself am a graduate of the Marine Navigation program. I graduated way back when in 1994. I sailed in Canada and all over the world for about 12 years before coming back here to Georgian about 15 years ago to teach and to coordinate the programs. So I'm very pleased to not only represent my program, but represent my shipping and global and domestic marine industry here today for you guys. It's an exciting time to get into the marine industry. So I'm going to share with you a presentation called Getting Your Bearings, and an introduction to the marine industry here in Canada. We're going to talk about shipping regions, the types of vessels, industries served, marine transportation, impact and environmental efficiencies, safety promotion within the industry, very important. Look at the shipboard positions, the deck side and the engineering side. Kind of have a little quick discussion on why a career in the marine industry might be good for you, and then obviously why choose Georgian College. This is our country. Obviously, we're well familiar with this, but we have Pacific region on the west coast, where you have mostly container vessels, bulk vessels, special forestry, and a lot of tug and barge industry as well. You have the Arctic region, where you have Arctic supply, Canadian Coast Guard vessels, and the Atlantic Montreal region, which is kind of the eastern region, where you have bulk carriers, container vessels, large number of tankers. Offshore supply was big, obviously, before COVID kind of shut those down for a little while, and fishing fleets. And our industry here on the Great Lakes, we have primarily served by self-unloading vessels, bulk carriers or bulk vessels, and tank vessels. And there's also a large number of tug and barge operations as well, which are kind of interesting. They serve very unique customer needs. Just a quick overview of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway. The Great Lakes, obviously, Lake Superior, Michigan, Lake Huron, our little Georgian Bay over here. Lake Erie and Lake Ontario are the 5 Great Lakes, and you have the St. Lawrence River system here. And then you get out into the salt water here, where you have 7 islands, Port Cartier, Bay Como on the Quebec side. There are 8 locks between Montreal and Lake Ontario, seven locks between Lake Ontario and Montreal. There are 8 locks in the Welland Canal between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, and you have 1 more lock up at Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So you have 16 locks to get from saltwater all the way up to the lakehead in Thunder Bay. It's an amazing engineering marvel, and quite interesting. Types of vessels that Canada, I guess, has in a large quantity. A lot of naval vessels as well, which is not really an industry we serve, but the training is similar. You have the cruise industry. You have container vessels that supply, that move containers globally and throughout the Great Lakes. You have icebreakers, which obviously work throughout the Great Lakes in the wintertime. Passenger vessels such as the Chichimon that move passengers, vehicles, trucks and trailers and things like that, either across rivers or across lake systems themselves. This is a self-unloading vessel. So the Great Lakes is quite unique in that the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway System pioneered the self-unloading type vessels. You can see one here at the bottom. You see one here coming through the lock on the bottom right, and this is one actually being loaded. You can see the boom here, which is just being moved up and out of the way while it's loaded from a shore facility. But loading them is the same as loading any other vessel, but they have their own conveyor system, which helps to, which provides them the opportunity or the mechanical means to unload their own cargo, which makes them very unique. It makes them almost like a tanker, but they don't carry liquid cargoes. They carry cargoes like grain, stone, coal, cement, any bulk cargoes that that kind of pile up, I guess. Bulk carriers, on the other hand, look almost the same as a self-unloading vessel, but they don't have any of their own self-unloading gear. So they carry a lot more cargo, maybe 25 to 30% more cargo than a self-unloader for the same dimensions, but they require shore-based unloading systems like the one pictured in the slide on the top right here. These are grabs, and the grabs go down into the ship and they pick up the cargo and they remove them. The cargo takes, 1 or 2 days to unload a vessel, where a self-unloader might take 6 to 7 hours to unload itself. So a little bit slower pace, but that's enjoyable as well. These are tankers. I worked on tankers for mostly my entire career. Traded all over the world and the east coast of Canada, United States, with mostly crude oil and dirty products and things like that. But Great Lakes products, the Great Lakes tankers move mostly clean gasolines, diesel, some fuel oil, kerosenes, and chemicals and things like that. Fantastic careers on tankers, really challenging work, very, very safe work. The standard for safety is probably as high as it is in any other type of shipping in the industry itself. Obviously the risks with moving liquid cargoes from pollution to, to fires and things like that are theoretically very high, but in reality, tankers are the cleanest vessels afloat and the safest vessels afloat with the lowest accident rates. So, standard accommodation. If you were to come, say, we'll go back a slide there, and you decided you wanted to come to Georgian and you wanted to start a career on ships, you have to live aboard the ships. So standard accommodations, something like this, okay? You have your own kind of relaxing area, televisions, coffee tables, couch. You have your bed, porthole, storage for your clothing, your laptops, your personal items, things like that, and obviously your own washroom. Okay, nothing too extravagant, but the higher in rank that you go, from a cadet to a third mate or a junior engineer to senior officer to captain and chief engineer, the reward is an increase in, from an increase in responsibility, is an increase in privilege and pay, and and better accommodation most of the time. If you're into fitness and exercise, most ships have fitness facilities on board, kind of like this one. This is probably your average vessel. Like anything else, usually if the crew is interested in something like this, then the captain or the company and will invest in it. If no one's using it, then you might not. So it does vary from vessel to vessel. Obviously, a ship and an army, they run based on the quality of food, right? So most of the vessels you'll work on, food is usually pretty good, and it's rarely a complaint when our students come back off of CoOp. Nobody talks about how bad the food was. They all come back a little bit heavier. So food is good. Safety. So as you can imagine, you can't call the fire department if you get into trouble, or if you have a fire or you have to abandon ship or something. You can't call for help when you're at sea or in the middle of the lake. So part of your training as an officer here at Georgian is called marine emergency duties. So lots and lots of firefighting practice, lots of lifeboat life jacket, life raft, lots of fire control, a lot of first aid, things like that. So you have to learn quite a lot about that stuff because you have to be self-sufficient. So if you're looking at all the things you're going to learn, there aren't too many college programs and careers where you're going to get such a fantastic rounding of education and training as you do in order to enter the marine industry. Let's take a few minutes just to look at the standard organizational chart on board. All right, we won't spend much time on it, but we'll quickly look at it. Everyone knows that every ship or boat has a captain, and the captain is overall in charge of everything and represents the ship owner on the day-to-day business. On the left here, you have called the deck department, where you have the officers, the deck officers, navigators. So you have a first mate, second mate, and third mate. And then in the off-colored yellowish here, you have the unlicensed crew. And on the right, you have the engineering department headed by the chief engineer. And then you have the second engineer, third engineer, and fourth. And then you have the unlicensed crew here. So at Georgian, we have the Marine Navigation Program, which helps train and provide education to the navigating officers, first, second, and third mates. And we have our Marine Engineering Department, which provides training and education so you can become a fourth, third, second, or chief engineer. So the two programs, Marine Navigation on the left, Marine Engineering on the right. Quick look through here. So a mate, all right, or a deck officer, they have basically 8 to 12 hours of work per day. If you're at sea, you're doing navigation, so you're helping navigate the ship from point A to point B. And if you're in port, then the money is made by the ship owner from hauling cargo. So you have to prepare the vessel for the cargo it's about to load. You have to load the cargo, transport the cargo safely to its destination, and then unload the cargo to the new cargo owners. And that's where the ships make their money. If there's no cargo, there's no employment and there's no revenue. So the deck officers are in charge of both of those, and the chief mate is in charge of all the cargo, and the captain the navigation and everything else. If we look at the engineering department, again, captain is still overall in charge, but the chief engineer is in charge of everything mechanical on board. So your engines, boilers, pumps, generators, other machinery systems crucial to the vessel's operation. So overall, you have again, the chief, second engineer, third engineer, and fourth. So graduates of the Marine Engineering Program will generally start off as a fourth engineer, and in time, short amount of time, third engineer, and then usually a little bit longer, and some further education, they get to second engineer, and then finally to chief. And the other part here are the unlicensed crew. So the engine department, engineers are responsible for operating everything mechanical on board, and there's a long list here. But if it moves, or if it's electrical, or anything, they are in charge of maintenance and then breakdown repairs. Rarely do we bring shore staff aboard to fix things, and rarely do we send things ashore to be repaired. Every few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, ships go into dry dock, and at that time, major repairs are done, and servicing and surveys and inspections are done. But for the most part, the day-to-day operations of the vessel are conducted by the engineers. So a great team aboard. Quick overview of related careers. We often are asked if we have to spend, if this is it, this is the career we spend the rest of our lives working on ships. I worked for 12 years and I've been 15 years as a college professor. A lot of my colleagues have gone into consulting, marine consulting. Canadian Coast Guard and Transport Canada are always hiring experienced persons. A lot of my friends are now ship's pilots throughout the West Coast, Great Lakes, and Halifax. Shore superintendents and oil and gas industry, and for the engineers primarily you have power generation plants. So why a career in marine transportation? A lot of reasons. Unparalleled employment opportunities. I've always said if you want a career where you can see a ladder, you can see each step in the ladder, you can say that today I'm a cadet, all right? And 3 years from now, I become a fourth engineer, or I become a third mate, and then the next job up is one step higher. It's a third engineer or a second mate, And then you still have a job one step higher as a second engineer or a chief mate. And even then, you become a chief engineer or a captain. And after that, all right, you can either stay at those ranks or you can look for jobs ashore. You can parlay those skills into a multitude of different careers, unparalleled employment opportunities. And with each increase in rank comes a marked increase in salary and privilege. Fantastic opportunities, and there's always something more there for you. You don't have to settle if you don't want to, but if you do want to settle, there is a fantastic career as a ship's officer for you, and you'll make good money at it, and it provide you and your family with fantastic life. Work-life balance. All right, this you get to travel a lot. I've seen an awful lot of the world. I've seen a lot of North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and a lot of other places. And at the same time, you get to enjoy a lot of time off as well. Okay. Exceptional opportunities for women in the industry. A lot of the students that we've get over the years have been female, and it turned into fantastic officers with exceptional careers as well. Why an education at Georgian? Marine training and marine education is, there are only 4 or 5 schools in Canada that provide this education, and Georgian is the only one in Ontario. I've been here for about 15 years, and since that time, or in that time, we've invested about $20 million in, I'll show you a few things here, in world-class engineering simulation, in world-class marine navigation simulation, in a world-class marine emergency duties training center. And we also have regular classrooms. We've got some fantastic professors, instructors, training staff, and I have worked all over the world on ships, as I said before, and worked with Europeans, worked with Asians, Americans, Canadians, and I can honestly say that the education that I received here at Georgian was excellent. And while others in the world are fantastic seafarers, they weren't better, and they weren't trained better than I was. So that gave me a lot of pride when I was working at sea. And we still try to maintain that high standard of training and education as well. And certainly the facilities are all here for that, and for you, and for your success. So what's the remuneration? What am I going to get paid when I graduate here? Okay, so junior engineer or a junior officer is a 3rd mate and 4th engineer. These figures came from Algoma Shipping Corporation, and they're based on about 6 months or 180 days of work. So you work half the year and you're getting $110,000 a year plus. As a senior officer, which is a chief engineer, a chief mate or a second engineer, you're looking at $150,000 a year. Chiefs are up to 180 plus, and captains are over 200,000 a year. That's for 6 months. That's not for 12 months. So you have to remember that. If you prorate that for 12 months, it's double. That's double. That's a lot of money. More money than I'm making here. I can tell you that right now. So it pays. Just want to go back to this. Nothing worthwhile is free, right? So the education and the program and the training you're going to get here is not easy. It is difficult, and it's difficult for a reason, because these jobs are fantastic jobs, and they require you to have proven a certain standard, and we're going to make sure you do that. That's the end of the presentation. Again, I'd be happy to field any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Colin. Every time I talk to you or see a presentation about marine studies, I learn many new things. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm sure our participants did as well. Question for you: are there enough co-op positions available? How does a cadet apply for a co-op position? How does that work?
First question is, co-ops are competitive, so we do try on an annual basis not to take too many more cadets than we may have co-op positions available for, but for the most part, if a student is doing well in the program, they're passing all their courses, and they they interview well, their resumes are written well, they participate actively in the hiring process, and then in general they are successful in obtaining a co-op. Students that maybe are failing or are not interviewing well, who don't prepare themselves properly for the interview process, may not be successful. I guess I would qualify that as just being a life lesson. Nothing in this life or at Georgian is ever guaranteed for anybody. So whatever co-ops are available, you have to earn them and you have to work for them. But for the most part, if you do your part, there is a co-op available there. Second part of the question is we have a co-op department, and the co-op department helps students with their applications, and it helps students write their resumes and cover letters, and facilitates the application to the shipping companies for co-op placements. We have about 14 or 15 shipping companies that partner with us to provide co-op placements and graduate placements, which is as important. And the co-op department kind of works as the go-between between the shipping industry, crewing departments, and the cadets. They provide days, normally pre-COVID, where the shipping companies come to the college and they interview cadets, and then subsequent to that, offers are made. COVID now, obviously, we'll be doing online interviews and things similar to this in January and February of this year. So while things have changed, they remain the same, but the use of technology is the big change right now. But yeah, does that answer your question?
I think so. Also, Colin, can you speak to whether international students are able to get a Canadian Marine Certificate of Competency upon graduation from the program?
That's a great question. So in order to receive a Canadian Certificate of Competency, you must be a permanent resident of Canada or a Canadian citizen. So the direct answer to that is no, Canada will not provide a non-Canadian with a Canadian license. However, we have a partnership with the Liberian Maritime Authority, and the Liberian Maritime Authority has approved our marine training and education programs and will provide Liberian documentation, including a certificate of competency, to our graduates, particularly our non-Canadian graduates. So this will allow a non-Canadian grad to obtain a license and then to work within the Liberian fleet, which is extremely large shipping fleet. I think the second largest shipping fleet in the world after Panama. For a year or 2 years while their permanent residency applications go through. And then once they become permanent residents, then then Transport Canada will issue that license to them, provided they qualify, the same as a regular Canadian. The other point to this is too that there's a knock list, it's called, and foreign seafarers are high on that knock list, meaning that their applications generally go through faster because there's such a demand for skilled seafarers in Canada. So while it's not a perfect system for training and education in Canada for non-Canadians, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we'd be quite happy to discuss those options with non-Canadian or international students.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Colin. We have a question here about work schedules. So can you speak a bit to the schedules throughout the year, the structure of time on and time off? You definitely have experience in this, so what can you tell a prospective student?
Absolutely. I guess the first statement is you can't work in the marine industry and go home every night. So once we kind of accept that, I always like to say it pays really well, but there's a sacrifice, right? And the sacrifice is that you have to be away from home for weeks at a time or months at a time. So in general, the general large merchant shipping fleet, you can go away for up to 3 months at a time and then come home for a month, go away for 3 if you work on the Great Lakes, and the season starts in the spring once ice out and finishes around Christmas time or whenever it kind of freezes up again, usually in late December, early January. And during the shipping season, you generally work 2 or 3 months on and a month and a half off, 2 or 3 months on, month and a half off. That's the average fleet. The tankers, in particular, the tankers that are working the Great Lakes right now are about month on, month off. So you have, and there's cement carriers as well. Some of the tug and barge operations are like that as well. So depending on the company's standard, some people are not happy with a month on, a month off. They want to do maybe 2 months on and maybe get 2 months off or something like that. When I was sailing, it was 5 months on and 2.5 off. Then I went to 4 on, 2 off, and then I went down to about 10 weeks on and 10 weeks off for the rest of my career. And then that was a great rotation. So the answer is it varies considerably from company to company, and even from ship to ship sometimes, because you may just find yourself on a vessel where it's a 1 month on, month off rotation, and it works fine. One of our program assistants here, her husband works on one of the cement carriers for one of the shipping companies, and he just works a month on, month off, and it's great family life, pays well, and he's home 6 months of the year. So but it's there, and the beauty of the industry is if you the harder you work, the more privilege you kind of get later on. But the idea is originally that you spend the time when you're getting started, you put your time in, you sacrifice, and then a little later on, usually a couple of years down the road after you've gained some higher licenses, better conditions are found at that point.
Great. That's a lot of detail. I'm sure that was very helpful for people to understand how the industry works. And would you say not being able to swim, is that a disqualifier for any of the courses? What do you say to a student who has trouble with that?
If you have to swim, you've done something wrong. Generally, it's kind of like I worked on oil tankers, and if you ever saw the cargo, you did something wrong. So no, swimming is not a prerequisite. Absolutely, the entire island of Newfoundland, about 3/4, 9/10 of Newfoundlanders can't swim, but yet they form, the largest seafaring province in the country. Really, no, swimming is not an issue whatsoever. No.
I didn't know that about Newfoundland. That's fascinating.
The water is too cold.
Yes.
They don't learn to swim. So,
very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And could you tell us how many people do we take into the Marine Studies program each year versus how many apply? What's that ratio look like?
So engineering, we don't have as many students applying as we would like. So we would set our cap at 30 and we would get 20 maybe. So if you apply to marine engineering and you satisfy the admission requirements, then you will be, unless this year something blows up, you will be accepted. For navigation, we have a lot more applicants than so we're a high demand program. So we generally have more applicants than we have available seats. So it's a little more competitive than engineering is, for sure. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And we also have a question of how many people are in each class. So do those numbers make up a class, or are they made up differently?
So engineering, it's around 20 or less every year because that's the number of students we take. Navigation, this year we've got 38. Normally we have around 25 to 30. And by the time they get to third year, they're a little less. They're somewhere around 18 to 24. For regular classes that, like just call it bulk teaching, but, your regular classes, then we'll leave you in the size of your class. But where specialized training is required, we usually break the groups down into sizes from 12 to 15, and it's called sectioning. So if you had a class of 30, say, we have 30 people in the lecture, and then we would break it down into, say, 12 to 15 per group for things like simulator classes or workshops or things like that.
Okay. And we're getting down to our last few minutes, and we still have quite a few questions, but could you touch on how the pandemic has affected program delivery, and are courses online, or are there some in-person components and some online courses? How does that work, Colin?
Absolutely. So our programs are what's the word? Transport Canada.
Regulated.
Are regulated, that's the word, regulated by Transport Canada, and they're very particular in that pre-COVID, all of the classes had to be taught in person and the students had to attend 90% of the time. Now with COVID, we have permission to do what's called a blended delivery, where theoretical lectures can be delivered online, and all the practical teaching and training has to be done on campus here. So we kind of have a blended model. So students are here a third of the time on campus, and the other 2/3 perhaps are, as a rough ratio, are done online. Now the other part is all of our testing, though, our approval by TC right now is dependent on all of the testing and exams being done on campus. So students are expected to be in the area for the program. So yeah, it's not online completely, it's a blended option, but the expectation is, particularly in winter, when driving is challenging in this area, that we do expect our students to be in the area, in the city, or really close by.
Okay. And is it challenging to find places to live when they need to be near campus? Is that something that that students find a challenge?
The campus has 2 residents that are quite close. One is operated by a local family here, which they saw a need, and they're a construction business family, so they built a set of residences near a grocery store, actually, and everything else, and it's quite right across the road from Starbucks, and it's fantastic. And then the college partnered with a residence company, and we've got a proper residence building very close to the campus, about a 5-minute walk. And then there are other students that stay in the community as well. So it can be challenging to find spaces, so you want to make sure you book ahead of time. But certainly they are available if you look ahead of time.
Okay, great. And it's a beautiful area too. And if someone, you mentioned, the 2 different areas, navigation or engineering. If someone started and they were taking engineering, is there a pathway if they then want to get into navigation?
Not really. It's kind of oil and water. That question gets asked once in a while, but you really have to commit at one. Really, you just have to commit and own it one way or the other. While it can be done, it just doesn't. Once in a while, we have a student that starts in one program and says, "I want to switch to the other," and you have to restart. There aren't enough similarities or equivalencies, really.
Great. Well, thank you, Colin, for joining us, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're just coming to the end of this session, and we had some great questions that were in our question chat. If you didn't have a chance to get all your questions answered, you do still have more ways that you can connect with us. You can take part in another virtual recruitment event. We have 4 coming up in the next few weeks. Our hour-long Get to Know Georgian events, they take place November 19th and 24th, as well as December 3rd and 8th. You can watch a recording of this live session and others that you might have missed because you couldn't attend more than one at a time. And we'll send you an email with links when they're ready to watch those sessions. You can sign up for brief webinars that are being led by some faculty of the programs that you're interested in, and we'll send those details through an email as well with links. And when you're ready to apply, you can set up a 30-minute phone appointment with one of our recruitment specialists, and you can find that information on our main website by clicking on Connect with a Recruiter button in the top right-hand corner. We hope you're ready to apply to Georgian today, because if you apply today through OCAS, we will credit your application fee, so you will apply for free today as Georgian as one of your programs. So, but we're happy to help you today and hope that you got all the information that you needed and learned something about the Georgian experience.